Hey, friendo, Steve here.
And Larson.
So we could sit here and tell you exactly why Going In Raw is the only pro wrestling podcast you need to be listening to.
But why hear it from us when you can hear it from this cheap Undertaker impersonator we found milling about outside our office?
Take it from the dead man. The only thing greater than having powers of darkness is having the power of listening to Going In Raw every day. Only when you've subscribed will you rest in peace. Now, where's my sandwich?
Wait, what, sandwich? Did you tell him he could have a sandwich?
No, I told him he could have your sandwich.
Fine.
Going In Raw, a pro wrestling podcast available every day wherever podcasts can be found.
Did you know that the Pope once tried to ban racing? Or how an Indy driver became the biggest drug dealer in America?
More than $100 million worth of marijuana into South Florida.
Hi, I'm James Pumphrey from Donut Media.
And I'm Nolan Sykes, also from Donut Media. And we're the hosts of the Past Gas podcast, where we dive deep into the automotive world's most insane stories.
Like when Ford tried to buy Ferrari, or when Evel Knievel brawled with the Hells Angels.
Evel Knievel just jumped off his bike and punched him.
From the greatest rivalries to simply how a car came to be, we'll cover it all in Past Gas. So make sure to tune in every Monday for free wherever you get your podcasts.
Past Gas Podcast.
It's about cars.
It's not about farts.
I promise.
You are listening to Any Given Sunday, a part of the Dead End Podcast Network. Please subscribe to our podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, and all other podcasting services. Please make sure you check out Dead End Hip Hop, Dead End Sports, Dead End Gaming, Is the Mic Still On, Chris Platt's Strictly Hip Hop and Hoops Talk, and a host of other shows on our podcast network. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
Yo, welcome back to Any Given Sunday, Tuesday edition. I'm actually getting comfortable doing these Tuesday shows. Anyways, we're back with another episode of the podcast. My guest this week is a returning guest, friend of the show. I think this is now, 2 times in 3 months now? I think we're
2 times, 3 months.
Building, yeah, not even counting
3
your
times
show.
overall.
Yeah, not even counting your show. So yeah, we're getting comfortable at this. Josh Rodriguez, man, host of the Dime NBA podcast, producer at The Undefeated, all kinds of stuff. He'll announce all his titles, man. He's got many hats. Josh, welcome back to the show, man. What's good?
Thanks for having me on, man. We're quarantined. We're staying safe. We're doing the right thing over here, and we're enjoying the Jordan documentary, which I'm excited to talk about.
It's actually good to have some sports to watch on TV, right? Like, it's refreshing. I've actually forgotten the feeling.
Yeah. If you want to call it sports, yeah. I mean, it's a documentary, but hey, I'm still missing live action.
Beggars can't be choosers, my friend. Beggars can't be choosers.
Facts.
Facts, man. Yeah. So before we get into it, I always like to have a small discussion on COVID-19 before we start any podcast, just because that's the world we live in. And, I always like to ask my guests how they're enduring the trying times, man. So just how is COVID-19 treating you? First and foremost, everybody in the family safe?
So not to bring the podcast, I had an uncle who passed from it a few weeks ago.
Oh man,
unfortunately.
Jeez.
I had a cousin who had it, recovered. She's good. I had another uncle who had it, recovered. He's good. My family's in New York, just for those who don't know. Yeah. So it obviously hit hardest in New York, and my family dealt with it. Unfortunately, I lost an uncle, but everyone else has recovered, and it is what it is. I mean, there's really not much to say when someone passes away. I just hope that, it's my mom's brother and she was close to him, and I'm just checking up on her. Me personally, I'm healthy. I'm doing okay. I did lose my job for 2-3 weeks due to the virus, but I got it back in a little bit of a part-time capacity, which I'm grateful for. I know a lot of people are out of work, so definitely not going to complain if I have some hours going for myself. And, I like being inside. I'm pretty introverted as I've gotten older. I like going on long drives, so I'll do that if I have to get away and get my mind off things. And, like I said, it's for what's best in the country, and for the health of everybody else around me. And if you just look at it that way, you should have no problem doing this. I mean, we're going to comfort our own homes. This is not jail. We're home.
I know, right? Although some people may think it's jail, it's not. It's not jail.
Oh yeah,
no, not even. We were talking offline. I was like, I don't mind the isolation though, man. It's like it's weird. I thought it would bother me, but it actually I have not minded it. It's like I'm not doing anything different that I normally would have done anyway. I just don't have the options to go out. You know what I mean? So It's weird.
Yeah.
I mean, I do miss going out to restaurants. I do miss part of the social interaction, the human interaction. I think we all need at some point. But
yeah,
other than that, like, it's nothing different than my normal routine. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think people are making way too much of it. But no, I'm glad that you are safe and most of the family is safe. Sorry about the uncle. Prayers to you guys for that. And yeah, man, this is real. It's affecting everybody in some way, shape, or form. And I know some people that listen to the podcast, it's kind of split. A lot of folks, they think, want a distraction, don't talk about it. And other folks are like, yes, talk about it. You have platforms. So it's always hard. You try to find the right medium or the right balance to talk about it. We don't try to make a whole episode about it, obviously, but we try to because it's reality, it's life, and we'll get into it a little bit later because I want to get your thoughts on the proposed, basically the back end. Well, I guess we can get into it now. We're talking about it. Why not?
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah, why not? Where are you on the start? On the resumption of the NBA season? I mean, there's a lot of people that have a lot of different opinions on what they should do. Should they come back just straight head into the playoffs? Should they come back and play out the 15 or 12 or so remaining games of the regular season? Should they not come back at all? Where are you kind of on the scale of what the NBA should do, and all sports really?
Well, first and foremost, I mean, if you're going to come back, you have to make sure everybody's safe.
Right.
And in order to do that, you have to create an environment in this country where, you are confident that we are testing correctly, that, the virus is dissipating, and we have plateaued, but, at the same time, we've plateaued in a way where it's like we've gone down in New York, but other places have gone up. And for me, it's like, I don't think this virus is done with the country yet. I think that, the way our government has handled it has been absolutely pathetic and horrible. And, testing is a joke.
On both sides, by the way. Both sides.
Yeah. And this is not just like Trump administration. I feel like the Democratic response has been absolutely pathetic. And it's people like you and I have been frustrated with the Democratic Party for a while, being that, we both consider ourselves progressives, and to see them kind of bend the knee to corporate establishment politics. I mean, because it's on both sides. I don't want to say corporate Republicans. It's on both sides. Right. It's been extremely frustrating. But, that's why my instinct is to say I don't even think they should bring the season back. I mean, because a ball boy, coach, an assistant coach, player, referee, if one person gets the virus, you have to shut it down. Like, there's nothing you can do. And if you want to bring back the playoffs, so that's 16 teams right there. That's a significant amount of people, who are doing different things when they're not, going to that basketball game. We don't know what the referee's doing. We don't know what, the coaches and players are doing. They might be isolating, but they might not be. The person keeping score, the person changing the scoreboard. Like, it's a lot of people involved.
The trainer.
And for me, it's kind of hard.
The guy in the office. I mean, anybody really,
Right.
and we could all live in our little bubble, not to cut you off, but we can all kind of live in our bubble and say, well, if we just keep the players isolated and just their hotels and blah, 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 like they won't get, I mean, what about the team officials that, go in and out of the facilities? You can't keep these people from going home. Can't keep the okay, they won't be vendors or people working in the facilities themselves, but, they'll still be referees. You don't know what they do when they leave. Okay, you can quarantine them in a hotel, but what about the camera folks? What about the TV crews? What about, I mean, it's just so many different variables with this. And I think people are thinking about this stuff with their heart instead of just logically with their mind. And I'm with you, man. I'm with you. I'm dying to get some basketball on TV. It's killing me that there's no baseball on right now. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's going to be crazy to think about a September and the possibility of no football, college or NFL, so, but I'm also being realistic. Like, we just don't know. We don't know what the risks are. And depending on where you read, what news station you follow, what doctor realistically you follow, like, some say there's going to be a second wave of this,
Exactly.
In the late fall, early winter. So that's another added bump, so, we think we're out of we're in the clear in September and October. Oh, wait, right around Thanksgiving, there's a second wave. Like, we just don't know.
Right.
And I think that to just think that this is just, to try to just make this a money issue or just an economic issue. And it is to a point, but just to make this just that is a mistake. I think you have to think about it from all different facets.
Yeah, I agree. And like, if it was up to me, I don't think there would be a season. I would personally tried out NBA basketball players. I mean, God forbid something happens. That's on you. Like, honestly, that's on you, Adam Silver, for you even to do that. Especially, you do have health experts. I'm sure the NBA is going to be able to talk to people like Fauci, like Birx, who I'm not a huge fan of, but like you do have access to those individuals and to the CDC. So your decision should be 100% responsible, and towards what the experts are saying, where the trends are going. And when I do my own research, the way I look at it is I just can't fathom anybody coming back and playing professional sports right now. So, I mean, that's what I think they should do. I don't know if that's what they're going to do. Hypothetically, if they do come back, I do think there should be some type of play-in tournament for like the 8th seed, just for the simple fact that, kind of stinks. Like, the season just kind of abruptly ended. On top of that, you want, these other teams to get back into shape. And I heard a good point the other day where it was like, why would you bring back teams like the Knicks and the Hornets and teams like the Kings who have a shot or whatever? Yeah. Like, it just doesn't make no sense. Like, you're playing for what? Like, what are you? Yeah, what's the point? Playing?
Yeah, absolutely. So who wants to?
Yeah.
No, I was
10 seeds. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, what's the point? I mean, who wants to see the Warriors in Charlotte in July? Like, who wants to see that? Like, it's and even Steve Kerr, to his credit, he said it like, hey, what's the point? He didn't come out and say it, but he's like, our season's done. Like, there's no point. And then you got to think about these players and their families, like, and the players are always going to say they want to play. Like, 9 times out of 10, I know some jokes are written in there, obviously, with the whole load management thing, but for the most part, these players want to play. They all want to play, and and most importantly, they all want to get paid. We get that. But I think that you have to be smart about this, and you have to. I'm with you. People think I'm crazy when I say I just don't see a way where you're going to have professionals. The 4 major sports. I don't see the 4 major sports coming back in 2020. I just don't. I mean, if you follow Fauci, if you read the reports from the CDC, I mean, a vaccine isn't even expected till late October, November. That's the earliest. More like February is where you'll see probably a vaccine. I don't see. And then you also got to think about it, and you can't even just think about it from the sports perspective. You also got to think about it from the political perspective too, because a lot of states, what are you going to do with the teams in Canada? Canada's still under lockdown. Right. Canada hasn't eased their restrictions at all, like some of the states here. They're not going by their provinces. They're going by the federal government. So Canada may say, you know what, we're keeping this lockdown till whenever. So how does that affect the Raptors? Same thing in Major League Baseball. How does that affect the Blue Jays? You know what I mean? Like, so there's so many different variables to this that I don't think people are even thinking about. And I often have exchanges with folks on Twitter, and they say, well, there's this proposal, and then there's that proposal, and they had a conference call today, and it's like, look, these leagues, they can have all the proposals they want. They can have all the conference calls they want until there's a vaccine or there's rapid testing where these players, feel comfortable and they're not at risk of infecting themselves, their families, or other folks, and vice versa. Like, I just don't see it. I just don't see it. And then also from the political perspective, you can't have, let's give $1 million athletes tests, but, Joe Schmo who's riding the bus every day, yeah, like that's not going to go off well either. It's just not. So yeah, no, it's tough because, of course you think about this from your heart. Like, we're all sports fans. Obviously we do a podcast, each of us, like, of course we want content. We're dying for content, but at some point you can't make these decisions solely based on your own self-interest and the bottom line. You have to make it based on sensible. I mean, this is different than a natural disaster. This is different than, somebody dying like in a totally unrelated situation. I mean, this is a something we haven't seen in 100 years. I mean, there's no precedent for this. There's no template for, how, unfortunately, there wasn't an NFL during the Spanish flu. You know what I mean? So there's nothing that we could go off of, like, hey, in 1926, they did this. You know what I mean? There's nothing there. So it's just going to be interesting what these leagues decide to do, man. I think the NBA is out of all the leagues, I have the most faith in the NBA just because I think Adam Silver is a sensible guy. Not that I agree with everything he does. I think he's the most sensible guy when it comes to things like these. And I think you know what? I think the NBA will be showing a lot of mettle and a lot of whatever adjective you want to use if they said, you know what, it's just not worth it. It's not worth, it's not worth the hassle and the aggravation. And the other thing you also got to think about it too, and I'll get your thoughts on this, what's the game going to look like? Because, do I want to see playoff games without no fans? Like, do I want to see that? Do I want to see playoff games in Orlando and in Vegas only? Like, I don't want to see that, and that's for all sports. Like, I don't want to see the Diamondbacks and the Mets in Arizona in front of no fans. Like, God help me. Like, what I mean? Like, I'm a base, like me, I love baseball, but I'll admit there's parts of it that are boring. And then if you take fans out of it, like, oh my God, like,
get it.
Yeah, like, what is that? And the same thing for football. Everybody was hot and bothered, over, this, last week, the end of last week about the NFL schedule release. I couldn't get excited about it. I'm like, okay, yeah, yay, Green Bay at New Orleans. Like, what's that going to look like?
Not happening.
Exactly,
the
right?
Superdome
like,
with nobody in the Superdome. Like, oh, it's not the Superdome anymore. Yeah.
Right, and we're somewhat joking, but that's a huge, like, and especially in a sport like football and basketball, where a home field or a home court advantage can really impact a game. Baseball's different. Baseball's just such a weird game. It doesn't matter. You could be in a raucous Yankee Stadium if a pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays is dialing it on all cylinders and he's got his slider working, it doesn't matter how many drunk Yankee fans are in Yankee Stadium. It's not gonna mean anything. But Green Bay, New Orleans. I'm just using those two teams as an example. Green Bay, New Orleans in a game in November for home field in the NFC. Like, that's going to matter where that game is played. And if there's fans, like, the same thing for the NBA. It could help. So what are these games going to look like? I'm with you. Like, so what do you think? Like, I'm really not that sold on these proposals to begin with anyway.
Yeah, so for me, like, you're going to have no fans. And like you said, what is that going to look like? That's going to look like complete crap. Like, it's not going to be fun. It's going to be boring to watch. I mean, we just watched a Jordan documentary. They talked about, like, the greatest game ever in that practice of the 92 Olympic squad. And to me, I'm watching that and I'm like, that doesn't look that intense. That doesn't look that crazy. I mean, and that's known as the greatest game ever played. And to me, it was just, okay. Like, this looks okay. Like, it looks like crap. Right. It looks like practice. It's going to look like we're watching practice. That's exactly what it's going to look like. Like, we're watching practice. And it would be interesting to hear, like, coaches shouting out plays and instructions to players and what the players say to the referees. I think that would be a cool aspect to it. I think the first time we watch, we'll be so giddy to watch sports that hearing those type of things it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be entertaining. And we're going to think this is great. But I think by the third, fourth, or fifth time we're watching it, like, this is like, because us fans being at the game, we add to the atmosphere. Now, a big reason why we even like watching sports is because of the atmosphere. Or else I would just go down to the local park and watch people play pickup. And I don't do that. I don't care to do that. Like, it's a whole vibe. Like, when you take the fans out of the game, there's no vibe whatsoever.
Fans are part of the presentation.
Yeah. Exactly.
They're part of the presentation.
It's a show.
Yeah.
It's a show.
Absolutely.
This is entertainment. And I don't know if I don't really want to watch it if fans aren't really at the game watching it. Like, I love basketball, don't get me wrong, and I will watch it because I do an NBA podcast. My job is revolved around sports, and I want to see who wins the championship. I mean, like, football, baseball, they haven't started yet. I don't even know if, like, to be honest with you, like, it doesn't excite me. And for whatever reason, I don't know why. Just thinking about them playing without fans is, like, kind of boring. It sounds boring and dull.
Dude, I thought I was the only one because people are just, I think, again, everybody's just so blinded by their thirst for sports, right? I mean, we're all desperate. Trust, I get it. Like, I had some of the Korean baseball league game on the other day. Like, I mean, I'm just dying for some competition. I get it. But it's like if your girlfriend leaves you and, like, you want her back so bad, but they're like, oh, well, you can have her back, but she'll have half a brain. And like, some people are like, yeah, I still want that. And it's like, no, I don't want that anymore. Like, she has half of a brain. She's not the same person. Right. Like, I don't want that. It's like your wife dies and you bury her in Pet Cemetery. She comes back as this demonic soul.
That's exactly what it is. That is perfect.
It's like, but she's back. She did try to stab me in the kitchen the other day, but look, she's here.
Yeah.
No,
she's here. I don't care that she's a demon. Yeah,
right.
That's exactly what it is.
Like, and again, we're all desperate, we're all thirsty and yearning for some competition. But I think at what point, and like you said, the no fans aspect of this, that has like a 15 to 20 game shelf life, if that. and then at some point, and all those folks that are saying, oh, I watched them play in the parking lot, they're the same ones that about game 15, they're like, I really want to watch this. Like, no. Like, yeah, and, baseball with the 81 game season and, putting, instead of having, 6 teams in, you're going to have, 10 teams in. I mean, then you're going to just get real gimmicky. Like, at what point do you have to think about, okay, what is this best for our product? Is this best for the overall game and the health of the sport? And I just don't.
But then you have employees on top of that, right? So you have a bunch of people who work for these organizations, not only in the front office, but people who work at the stadiums who are going to lose their jobs. So there's a lot of economic issues as well. And I can understand where people are like, open up the country because we need to work. I understand that there's an economic side to it, too. Like, it's not just a health issue. Like, there's, we have to get the economy going, but you have to be smart about it. You can't open up the economy just for the sake of opening up the economy.
Right.
And I think that's the problem that we're having with sports. Like, people want to have sports just for the sake of having sports. And it's not smart. It just isn't smart. We shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah. And of course it's easy for us to sit there and say, and tell $1 billion league, don't open up, cancel your season and lose millions and billions of dollars. It's easy for us to say that. I get that. But I mean, you got to think about the ramifications. And I want, and I think also we're focusing so much on the NBA because I think it's easier for the NBA to make this decision. They were at the end of their, and I'll throw the NHL in there as well. They were at the end of their season. They played the majority of their season. So all we're talking about now is the postseason, which is a huge, especially in these two sports, it's a huge, aspect of their sports. Baseball, baseball's got to be killing themselves because they're got to be wondering, like, when are we going to start? We have 162 games. We've already missed a month and some change now. Like, so it's different in the NFL. And I can't even focus on football right now. Because September is so far away right now. Like, who knows what's going to happen? Who the hell knows? We may have a vaccine by then. We may not. We may have a second wave by then. Like, we just don't know. So anybody and that's why I kept harping back on anybody that can sit there and tell you that they know what's going to happen in September, that, they're going to get excited about, a proposal that's, the commissioner sat with Trump. Nobody knows. This thing is changing by the day. So I think it's irresponsible to sit here and say that we all know an answer. We just don't know. And look, I'm one that my mood kind of goes some days I wake up and I'm positive about it and I feel the winds of change blowing and it's coming and I feel like we're going to play sports. And then I read something and then it's like, no, wake up another day and I'm extra negative. So it changes with the day, man, for me anyway. So I just wanted to see where you stood on it because I don't know what sports will look like, with restrictions. I just don't know what it will look like.
Right. Yeah. And it's not going to be fun. It's not going to be sports. It's a pet cemetery version of sports. I think you put it perfectly.
Facts. Absolutely. So if I were to give you a crystal ball and play this out a little bit, money on the line, gun to your head, whatever, anecdote or an analogy you want to use, how do you see this playing out? With the NBA, we'll stick with the NBA because obviously baseball and football, they have their own. Yeah. How do you see this playing out?
I think baseball and football handle it completely differently. Just throwing it out there. I don't think we're having a season. I think Adam Silver is probably, very level-headed about this. I think he's very smart. I think he's shown to be very, progressive, and I think he's on the right side of the argument here where it's almost like, all right, we have to protect our players. We have to make sure everybody's healthy. And a lot of that depends on our response to the virus, getting tested statewide, nationwide. And I just don't feel confident enough in the way we've been handling it as a country, our government, that I think you can justify throwing someone out there like LeBron James who can get sick with the coronavirus. Like, you just can't do that. And that I don't think there's any possible way that Adam Silver can justify that. And I think he knows that. They played a little more than half the season. They're going to get kind of screwed over on some revenue, but at the end of the day, you just can't. And I know he knows this. I know Adam Silver knows this. I think football handles it differently. I feel like I think those organizations and those leagues are run by more conservative people who are more concerned about the economy, and I'm not saying they're not concerned about the health of their players, but I think that they'll rush to have their sport, especially football. I think they'll rush it if they have to.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas I feel like the NBA, especially during the Adam Silver era, especially, like, I feel like they've been on the right side of history with a lot of different things. And I think this would be an exception. I don't think there's going to be playoffs.
Do you think there's a cutoff date? Like, do you think there's like a date where it's like, if we're not back by this point, like, what's the, cause I think I said this
July
in a
1st.
group chat. Yeah. I said by 4th of July, we don't have basketball going on. Why bother?
Doesn't make any
to
sense.
me, you might as well just focus your efforts on starting the 2020-21 season December 25th or even January 1st. That's what that's my thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. And then especially if something goes wrong, and then you have to look forward to the next season, you might have to start canceling that. Like, it's too big of a risk.
It's a domino. It's a domino effect. It's a huge domino effect.
It's not even. Yeah. It's not even. It's not worth.
Yeah. You cancel the season, you give yourself 6 months of coverage to just say, okay, look, let's just focus on getting 2020, 2021 off the book, off and running. Even if that means delaying the start of the season to just, Christmas Day or even, January 2nd. Like, let's just focus on getting 2020, 21 because it's just unfortunately, and look, I'm a Laker fan. I get killed here, this is the first time the Lakers have been good in 6 years, and it
sucks. Like, if the Knicks could win a championship right now, I'd be pissed if the Knicks were in contention right now. Like, I'd be absolutely pissed. I get it. I totally get it.
But you can't think of it like that. You can't. You can't logically think of it in that regard because this is beyond sports. This is beyond some championship. This is real life with real consequences. So, I'm with you. I definitely think July is definitely the cutoff date for me. You would logically think, right, that that's the cutoff.
It has to be.
Yeah,
and I think Adam Silver's a logical person, so I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. No, I agree. Man, let's move on. So Jordan documentary, Last Dance, episodes 7 and 8. So what I've been doing on the podcast every week with the reviews is kind of just finding 3 or 4, takeaways, news line items that kind of stuck out with each person throughout the episode. So I'll start with you. What were kind of the 3, first, before we get there, what were your thoughts overall on the entire documentary up to this point? I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it.
I think it's really well done. There's a lot of things I didn't know growing up. Obviously, I watched Jordan play, but I watched it through the lenses of like a 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever. I was really young. So to me, it was just Jordan whipping the ass at the Knicks every single time he played him. I didn't know the whole Jerry Krause situation. I didn't know Scottie Pippen's contract dispute. Dennis Rodman missing practices. So it's pretty cool to see that behind the scenes. The Atlantic City story I was very familiar with just because it happened against the Knicks and that was all over the media. So like that's something I've always known, but it's pretty cool to see, Jordan being Jordan. I think he's coming across way more likable than people thought he'd come across, which I think is pretty cool. I know he has a reputation of being a bad guy. I mean, to be honest with you, and pretty much a dick. But I don't think that this documentary is showing that. Not that I say it should show it. He just comes across way more likable than I thought he'd come across. Not that I like him. I hate him because he ruined my childhood. But I like it. I'm enjoying it, man. Like seeing the old footage of the Knicks, even though they're getting their asses whipped, it's still pretty cool because it's the last good memory I have as a Knicks fan. And I say this as a 33-year-old man. That's the last good memory I have of being a Knicks fan in the 90s.
I know.
So it's cool, to see like Grant Hill, like here and there, Kobe, like just players young in their, like before they're even their primes. Like it just takes me back, man. And, I miss 90s basketball, not because I think the game was better, just because the vibe, like the NBA and NBC, like something a little like that. I just miss it. It's nostalgic and it's
like the season mattered more. I feel like basketball mattered more there. Like,
it mattered. Yeah,
it wasn't so drama driven. It wasn't so, narrative driven. It wasn't a soap opera. Like that's what I feel about the NBA today. And that's why some of the reasons why I'm turned off. It just feels like basketball just feels like one big ass reality show now. And that's what it, drama, who's going to play here and who's going to team up with, and you've always had some element of that. I'm not going to lie. You've always had, not like this.
Now
not like
it's ridiculous now. Yeah. I mean, but we love it though. I mean, because during the summer, like free agency, when like, where's Kawhi going? I'm not gonna lie, I was in on it. I was like, oh my God, what's going on? And I was hype as hell when Kawhi went to the Clippers. Like, it adds to it, and social media is part of that as well.
Yeah, it adds to it, but now it feels like that is almost usurped, like the actual game. Like where it just feels like the off the court stuff is more important than like, oh yeah, the Lakers beat the Kings, 101-88. It just feels like, oh, but did you see what Anthony Davis and his agent tweeted? Like the game,
right?
Focus on the game. Like that's what it feels. That's the vibe. That's just me. It's just my opinion.
I get it.
That's the vibe that I get. But yeah, going back to the documentaries, yeah, I'm with you. I've loved every episode of them. What about these two episodes? I thought that these were the two best episodes of the series so far for me.
Did you?
Yeah. I had to rank them, so I thought 1 and 2 going into this past Sunday. 1 and 2 were still top notch, the best. But then I really enjoyed 7 and 8 because they were just more Jordan, and 1 and 2 were a lot of Jordan, but these two were just Jordan like you never seen before, like Jordan crying.
That was what I loved most.
Explaining his philosophy. Yeah. I just really, really enjoyed these two episodes, and I hope we're hitting a crescendo here with this documentary as we go to the end here, where these last two episodes are going to be fantastic. But going back to my initial question, what were kind of the 3 or 4 takeaways that you had from these two episodes on Sunday night?
It's interesting. I wanted to talk to you about this because no one had the same perspective I had in my group chat. That's when Jordan cried at the end of episode 7. He was, crying about how much he wanted to win and, his mindset of the game. And I got really sad for him because I feel like for the first time, like, I thought he cared what other people thought of him. That's how I took it. Whereas everyone else took it as, that's how much he wants to win. That's how much of a competitor he is. I think he wants to win so bad that it brings him to tears. And I was like, no, I actually take it as like, it kind of hurts him that people look at him as an asshole. And it kind of hurts him that, he has this reputation of just win at all costs, no matter what the personal relationships are. Like, and I feel like that was pain. That was pain of, not having friendships that he wished he would have had, or having this perception of being an asshole and not being the nicest guy in the world. To me, that was pain of like, man, I feel misunderstood and I feel alone and I feel like no one really understands me. And I'm really a nice guy. It's just that, I love to win. And that's how I took it. And no one in my group chat took it that way.
So, funny enough, I took it that way too. I think for the first time, I know, right? Yeah, we are. It's just amazing. No, I took it that way too. I think for the first time, I think it almost hit him that like, this is what I sacrificed. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I lost out on, but I don't think he cried or longed for it. I think it hurt him because people feel this way about it, and that he's heard it, and he's experienced it, and he's felt it, and he's heard all the quotes and the people saying, I mean, this is not new. I mean, obviously people have been talking about this for decades now, but I think this was the first time that I think it actually, as my daughter walks in and says, shush, I know, shush, right? No, I think this was the first time that I think, it actually hit him. Like, this is what I've always felt like success comes with a price, right? Like, the more successful you are, the more you give up, the more of yourself you give up. And in even the most minuscule of ways, you give up a piece of yourself. You may give up the family life that you have wanted. You may give up the personal comfort that you have wanted. You always hear about people who are, I think it was last episode where like the happiest he was just sitting in that hotel room, laying on the couch, because that was the only time that he just had an alone time, right? Like that was the only time that somebody didn't want a piece of Michael Jordan. And I think that, I think bringing up those memories, I think that was the first time that it actually hit him. Like, me being me having that burden of carrying this franchise, carrying this league, I think it was at the expense of, I had to be an asshole. Like I had to, cut certain things off. I had to cut certain pieces of that. Like, I'm sure Jordan wanted to have more personal relationships. I'm sure Jordan wanted to have more friendships in the league. But that was what he felt he had to do to be the greatest basketball player that he could be. And I always get upset when people try to tell you how you should do with your success, like how you should be successful. You know what I mean? Like I've never understood that. Like
like, that's what he felt he had to do. Now we can agree and disagree. Yeah. Like, I disagree with that. Like, I disagree. Like, to me, leadership comes in all shapes and sizes. Like, there's no one template that says this is how you need to be a leader. You know, you could be a vocal leader. You could be a leader by example. You could kind of be that quiet, the Tim Duncan type where you just kind of go out there and just do, you know, so leadership comes in so many different ways, you know, so that this idea that, you know, he didn't have to be that way. Well, that's how he felt he had to be. Now we can agree and disagree. We can debate from here to kingdom come how he should have been. Should he have been better? Should he have been nicer? That's what he felt like he had to do. So who are we to tell him that clearly it worked? He's a billionaire. He's won 6 championships. He's an extremely successful guy. Like, clearly it worked. Clearly he did something right. Right. So right. I read it like you, man. I think he kind of realized, like, damn, this is what I lost out. And I think it did hurt him. And I think also part of it was a little bit of passion, was that, like, no, I stand by this. Like, I stand that this is the way to do it. Now, you may not agree with me, and there may be other ways to do it that have worked or traditionally worked, but this is the way that I feel, and I stand by it. And I think that's what I think he felt. I think it was a 2-pronged thing. I think it was him realizing that he lost out on a lot of relationships. And I also think it was him defending his lifestyle, his belief, his principles. Like, this is what I believe in. This is what I feel like is the way to be extremely successful. Yeah. So I'm with you on that.
That's yeah. I think you hit the nail right on the head there too. It's like, you know, I moved out here to California, and I've not that I've lost friendships, but I'm not as close to people as I used to be back in New York. And it's like, it makes me sad when I think about it. But at the end of the day, am I going to trade that for what I've accomplished? I don't think I would. You know, it might make me sad that I, you know, missed out on a few things, or, you know, my relationships has changed with some of my friends back home. But, you know, I'm working with a company that I never thought I'd be working for, and that's the price you have to pay. And I think there's some sadness to it. It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet, but I do think it was more about him being in his feelings about not being liked and wishing that he had more friends. As simple as that sounds, like, just more friends. And my heart kind of broke from there.
There's a loneliness there. Like, and not to try to get all sappy.
He's lonely.
Analyze this, man. Like,
well, no one can relate to him. Like, nobody can relate to being the best in the world and one of the biggest things in the world ever. Like, he was literally the biggest person, and like the most famous person in the world at some point. Still kind of is. I mean, a little bit at least.
Really, I mean, when you think about it. And that's the other thing about celebrity culture as a whole, is that these people are unrelatable. Like, none of us can relate to what it's like to be, you know, I'll use Drake, for example. Like, nobody can relate to being Drake. Like, it's just like, you can't relate to this person just being so big and so massive, whether you like what they do or don't. Like, just being this lightning rod for just comments and attention. Like, nobody can compare to that. No one in their own personal life can relate to that. It's the same thing for any celebrity or any public figure. Like, nobody can relate to these people. So I definitely get it. And I love the example you just brought up about your own personal life. Like, we've all made these decisions. Like, any person, like, it's part of just growing up and maturing as an adult. Like, you know, I grew up in the hood. Like, there's relationships that these are people that there's people in the hood that I still have close relationship with and close ties with, but I don't hang out with them every time I go to New York. Like, cause I can't. And you know what? They're real dudes that are like, yo, you know, this dude's got a family, he's got a career, like, stay over. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the real dudes will understand that, because it's like, yo, that's not you anymore. And they can understand that. You know what I mean? Like, not saying that I was some hood, but I'm just making a correlation, right? That, like, you have certain friendships that you have to leave in that space and that time, because you're just a different person.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that doesn't mean that you have to, you evolve, and that doesn't mean that you have to lose a piece of yourself, or you have to lose your authenticity, but you just have to understand, like, yo, I'm in a different place. Like, you know, I have kids now. Like, I can't just go out on a Saturday night and get shit-faced drunk. And, you know, like, I have kids now. Like, I have responsibilities. You know, I have things that I'm responsible for. You know what I mean? Like,
and you might miss hanging out with that. You might miss. Yeah, exactly. You might miss going out, but at the same time, you're not trading your kids for nothing.
Right. You know, I'm not trading my job for anything. I'm not trading the success and the things that I've achieved for these things. You know, I mean, of course, you know, when I get little snippets of that life, I enjoy it, and I enjoy it for what it is, and I live in that moment. But overall, like, you don't trade that in. And I think that's the same thing with success and being a basketball star, and in this case, an icon, a legend. Like, I think you realize, like, yo, I could have went out and partied and, made friendships and, smoked cigars with all of my teammates and did this and did that. And was Michael Jordan the nice guy? But, he felt like he had to do this to be great. And I loved how he tied that to, I loved how he was sitting there passionately, like, you guys don't get to smile because that's not what I had to go through. Like, you don't, like, I came to this franchise and we were a laughingstock. We were, guys were doing drugs in the hotel rooms. Like, the league was just totally different back then. And this is what I came into. So I built this. Like, I built this shit. So you don't get to come here now on my laurels and smile and have fun and think this shit is easy. Like, no, this is hard work and there's a standard. And I love that. Right. Because I think that's real. Like, yeah, imagine building something and building a show, building a company, an empire, whatever. And like the struggle is the struggle. You know what I mean? Like everybody always glamorizes the success, right? Oh, Apple is this, but nobody ever talks about the struggle. Nobody ever talks about, Steve Jobs being broke, bouncing from house to house or dorm to dorm, dropping out of college and being dead. But like nobody ever talks about that part. They talk about the innovation. They talk about what Apple became and, they talk about the success, the end point, but nobody ever talks about the struggle, the come up. And that shit is real, and I think that, if you go through something like that, like, yeah, you're going to be defensive. Like, no, you don't just get to come here and laugh and enjoy and, basically, live off my laurels. Like, no, fuck that, so I really love that part. Yeah. Yeah. No, anything else that stuck out to you?
That was so interesting.
Yeah, no, it was.
To me, it's kind of, to me, another part that kind of stuck out was like the insane conspiracy theories about his gambling and leading to his father's murder. I mean, if like, bro, and this is not coming from like people on Twitter. Like Twitter obviously didn't exist back then, but this isn't coming from people on Twitter. This isn't coming from like some crazy people. This is coming from the press, like esteemed journalists who have jobs to objectively report facts. Like this, you know what I mean? Like to me, that is, I mean, I put myself in that position, his shoes, if my father was murdered. And I'll be honest with you, like, I love Vegas. Like, I like to gamble. I do. I don't have a problem, but like, if I go to Vegas, I will gamble. And if anyone were to connect that with like my father being killed, I would, like, I don't know how I would handle that. And I think Jordan handled those criticisms very well, especially publicly. I mean, it's very easy to go off, your father was just killed. And now people are trying to tie it to you. And this is, like I said, this isn't just like, someone on the street. This is like credible journalists who write for newspapers. And I don't know, man. Like, it's like putting myself in his shoes, like,
yeah, no, I get it. Putting yourself in his shoes is just like, it's just hard to imagine what he must have felt like. You just lose your father. And, oh, by the way, people are making conspiracy theories about it, like, and tying it back to something else that, look, I'm with you, man. I never thought the gambling thing was a huge deal. Like, I always, I mean, I know I was a kid when all this was going on, but even just kind of the years following, like, I always thought the gambling thing was just so overblown. Like, gambling's a personal choice. Like, it's like drinking. It's like
it's a personal, and it's also like a culture too. Like,
yeah, it's a culture.
It's not everyone's cup of tea, and it's a cultural thing too. Yeah,
right. It's not my cup of tea, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you you shouldn't gamble. And gambling is like, who am I to wag my finger? I'm sure I have my vices that somebody may not agree with, and that's okay.
Right.
Like, we're all humans. Right. We're all these complex individuals that have that are wired differently, that have our own thoughts and our own beliefs on what we think is right and what we think is cool. And who is one to judge another? Like, I never understood the gambling thing. Like, the guy, clearly it never affected him because, again, the guy's a billionaire. He owns an NBA team. He's got the most.
You would know if he had a problem, he would be able to hide it. You can't hide it.
If he was on an episode, if he was featured on that 30 for 30, the broke 30 for 30, where it highlighted all the athletes that went broke, like, if he was featured on that, okay, we can talk about the gambling situation. But no, Michael clearly knew what he was doing, or at least it didn't affect him to the point where he was losing his money. And look, you guys don't think that Michael Jordan had financial advisors, had people, in his ear.
Right.
Look, his parents had a huge sway in his life. I guarantee you, Mama Jordan would have been in his ass if he was out here blowing his money on some dumb shit that, some gambling stuff. Like, The whole gambling thing, the whole conspiracy theory around the gambling thing just always blew my mind. And you know what it gets back to is like when someone is presented with an image of perfection, you know, you're always going to have that other end of it where like, no, this guy can't be perfect. You know, no one's perfect, you know, and see, this is why he's not perfect, you know, and I think that there's a concerted effort to just tear that person down. It can't just be like, you know, we all know nobody's perfect. Like, no, like, be like Mike is a slogan. And no one wants to be like Mike because Mike is this great person. No, be like Mike was the slogan. Drink more Gatorade. That's what it was. Like, I never read that much into it. You know what I mean? So I think that there's always that reaction to try to tear somebody down when they're built up as being this like role model and this perfect person that everyone should aspire to be with and be as. And I think that's what that was. I think the gambling thing was what that was. The whole situation with his dad and I like to think that media's gotten worse in the time since then, and a lot of elements of it have. But I mean, even in the early 90s, I mean, you saw where the media landscape was trending to, where it was sensationalism, it was conspiracy theories, it was kind of gossip columns, and stuff. And like
that's
you said,
why we are here today.
These are respected writers, people that are like in the know, that were putting this shit out there. It wasn't like these were just nobodies on Twitter. I mean, I can only imagine if there was a Twitter back then. I mean, can you imagine, you know, Jordan's dad gets murdered a few weeks after.
Or even like a YouTube.
Yeah.
Like a YouTube. Imagine the videos that'd be out right now about Jordan and a conspiracy. But you're right. I think, you know, the media, I don't know when it started, but, you know, has been leaning towards sensationalism. And look where it got us. I mean, we're a product of that right now. And, you know, I mean, not to make things too political, but like to me, CNN, something like that isn't necessarily fake news. What it is, it's sensationalized news, where sometimes they are doing
news. What it is, it's corporations owning the news. And when corporations own something, it inherently becomes about the bottom line. It doesn't become about civil service. It doesn't become about doing something for the good of just good. Like, it becomes a bottom line. It comes a profit margin. So what sells? Sex sells. Scandals sell. You know, sensationalism sells.
So just sell sensationalism. And I think that's the biggest problem and I think our country has recognized that in the sense where it's like, oh, this is BS. I just think that our country has taken it in two different directions. And that's what we have, the divide that we have.
Right. No, I totally get it. Yeah. So I'm with you. That part also hit me well. And I think the thing for me that really stuck out, one of the things that stuck out for me in this episode was just him talking about his father and the emotion, talking about that and just how close he was. And you can just really tell that was the person that knew him the most, that was the cause it always felt like Michael always had walls around people. You know, probably like his family knows him well, but like his father was the guy. Like that was the guy that molded him, that made him the man who he is, that knew him better than anybody. The person that, I mean, who just to think that you're the person that the great Michael Jordan goes to for advice, that you're the person that the great Michael Jordan goes to about, you know, just not even just stuff on his game, but just life advice. Like, you know, what should I do about this? Or what should I do about, right?
You're the person whose sperm gave birth to the greatest basketball player.
That's another notch.
Like, honestly, I hate to say it like that, but it's just like if I gave birth, not I didn't give birth, but if I were to, you know, father the greatest basketball player of all time, I would be looking at myself like, oh, all right. Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Sure. I did that.
You did good.
No, for real, dead ass, yo. No, it's crazy. Yeah. So the part with his dad really stuck out to me. That was really emotional. You could just tell that was genuine, and that was real emotion there. And I think I pointed this out on the other previous episodes of the podcast. Just seeing Michael in that light, like with a little hint of vulnerability, a little bit of emotion. Like he's not this like cool, suave, you know, kind of this debonair guy. Like that barrier broken down when you're talking about like we talk about his lack of friends and talk about his philosophy, but also talk about his dad and just how that really hit him. And I think that the episode really hit me when, you know, we all remember the footage of him on the floor crying after the 96 finals, but there was never audio. There was never audio shown for that footage, right? And they finally showed the audio years later. And that's just, how can you, you basically have to freaking have an icebox there that doesn't hit you in some shape or form. So yeah, the dad stuff was really touching for me.
That's where I was going to go next too. With that was that audio, and that was heartbreaking. I kind of want to talk about that series a little bit. Gary Payton, Michael Jordan's reaction to Gary Payton.
And here I am sitting about telling you how it's good to see Michael in a vulnerable state and whatever. But it always goes back to Michael. And you know why Michael is just so loved? It's because he's just so cool. Like everything he does is just like, there's just a coolness factor to him, right? I mean, he really is a fucking walking superhero, essentially. And the one aspect of this is like, he's always on. Like he's always on that Michael game. Like even when it's like just him showing a video or something, like it's just like he's always on. And he's a walking meme. That's the other thing about, like, that's his greatness. Like, yo, Mike is a freaking walking GIF. He's a walking meme. Like his facial reactions, his
everything.
Just everything about that dude, man. He was just put on this earth, not only to be a great basketball player, but to just be a great content creator or content filler, I guess, whatever you want to say.
Well, because there's really no chinks in his armor. Like he could shrug off anybody saying anything about his ability, and it's like, well, yeah, I'm going to side with Jordan on this one. Like, how could you not? I mean, if he's laughing at Gary Payton, like it's like, all right, well, I mean, he's going to laugh at Gary because like he won the championship and he's Michael Jordan, so he can do anything and it's going to look cool. He can do anything and you're going to agree with it, and he's going to be on the right side of history.
And look, I would have laughed at Gary Payton too. Like, Gary, you guys lost the first 3 games of that series. And honestly, the only reason that you guys even lost 2 is because the Bulls took their foot off the gas. I mean, honestly, the Bulls could have easily swept you guys. So this idea that
out in game 6.
Like it just it's just hilarious. I love when anybody makes Gary Payton look bad. I've never liked Gary Payton. That's just me. But when anybody can just make Gary Payton look bad, you're a friend in my book. But that was funny. Yeah, that was funny. One thing that really stuck out to me, I think one thing that has stuck out to me throughout this entire kind of list of episodes is Scottie Pippen. And I want to rant about Scottie Pippen. But before I rant, I want to ask you about Scottie. Has anybody looked worse in this documentary series than Scottie Pippen? Maybe other than Jerry Krause, right? Like Scottie Pippen.
Yeah, you got to say Jerry and Isaiah. Scottie's up there too.
To me, Scottie Pippen is number one. Like Scottie's, like if Scottie was a stock, he just like I'd be just sell at at a high rate right now. Like no, Scottie, you know, I've always had this fight with folks because I've always had these arguments that, you know, is Scottie Pippen historically, is he overrated? Is he underrated? And I've always kind of teetered on he's rated, like borderlining overrated. Like I
really,
I think Scottie Pippen is great. I think he's a great player, but Scottie was a great wingman. And I think that sometimes
he's the best number 2 of all time. He's the best number 2 of all time. Could never be a number 1.
Yeah, he's not a number 1. And I think he proved it in 1994. Yeah. He proved it. And you know why he proved it? He didn't prove it by not scoring this many points or by not doing this. But when you quit on your team the way he did, in such a selfish way, like that shows you everything that you need to know about that guy. And the fact that Phil Jackson, one of to me, the greatest coach in NBA history, when the greatest coach in NBA history, who knows you, who basically developed you, runs a play for a rookie. I know Kukoc is, you know, stretching it by saying a rookie. Obviously, he played in Europe for years, but basically a rookie, right? He runs a game-winning play for a rookie instead of the guy that's won him 3 championships. That tells you everything that you need to know about Scottie Pippen. He just, and look, I know it's easy to look back in retrospect. Obviously, Kukoc made the shot. Who knows? It could have been a disaster had he not made the shot. Like everybody would have been like, so of course we have the benefit of history and hindsight, obviously, to make this statement. But like, I've always felt like Scottie Pippen, not overrated in like, oh, he's definitely, but he's slightly, I think people overestimate how great he was. Like, I think he was great. I obviously think he was underpaid. But I do think people like to put Scottie Pippen in that rarefied air with the Jerry Wests and the Charles Barkleys and the Jordans and the Magics and
hell no, he's not. But just a quick nugget on that game in itself. I mean, I don't think people know this. They didn't show it in the documentary. The Knicks were down 6 with a minute left to go in that game, and they basically tied the game up. They scored 6 straight points, and the previous 2 possessions, it might be 3, but I know it was 2. The previous 2 possessions before the Kukoc shot ended in a Scottie Pippen contested jumper with shot clock winding down. And I think the reason why Phil drew up that play was because the offense got stagnant, because Scottie took bad shots, not because he was forced to take bad shots. It's just because that's the shot that he chose to take. And I think Phil wanted to take it in a different direction. So just to add context to why I think he went to Kukoc, I think that's the reason why he went to Kukoc. It's like, I'm not going to give the ball to Scottie and have him force up another thing for their 3rd straight possession. Right. But to your point, I mean, if that's Jordan, I'm giving the ball to Jordan. If that's like a LeBron, I'm giving it to LeBron. But I do think Scottie, to me, is, I think he's underrated because I do think without Scottie, the 90s Bulls are, I mean, the landscape is completely different. I think if you put Scottie on, let's just say, the Suns, I think the Suns might be the dynasty. If you put him on the Jazz might be the dynasty. I think he's like the most important number 2 person to ever play the game. Because I think no matter wherever he was, I think that would have been the dynasty. Not because Jordan wasn't the best, because you're seeing clearly right now with LeBron. And LeBron's been the best player in the world for years, but he's only won 3 championships. It's because he's played better teams. And I think Jordan would have had a similar path if Scottie was on the team. I don't think Jordan would be 6 for 6. I'm not saying he wouldn't have championships, but he sure as hell wouldn't be 6 for 6.
No, and look, I know that this is going to blow up and be like, you call Scottie Pippen over? Like, no, I think, look, Scottie Pippen is a great player. He deserves to be top 50 all time. I mean, basically invented the small forward position, right? I mean, in a lot of ways, essentially. Right. He was the template for the small forward position, or the point forward position.
Point guard.
Yeah.
Point forward. Yeah, point guard. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm not trying to and I think that his value on those Bulls teams is underrated, right? Like, I think people, before this documentary, I think people didn't appreciate what he brought to the game, especially that Bulls team. I'm just simply saying, individually speaking, his legacy, his own kind of game, I think people kind of overrate Scottie. Like, I think people will have you think that if Scottie Pippen, would have went to the Charlotte Hornets and he was the franchise guy, the guy, the Batman, he would have averaged 29 points a game and he would have been this superstar, face of the franchise type of guy. And I'm like,
he could be a face of the franchise. He could be a face of the franchise, but you could be a face of the franchise in the way Mitch Richmond was a face of the franchise for the Sacramento Kings, never going to the playoffs, averaging 20 points a game. Like, that's what he could have been. There's faces of the franchise for every franchise. Like, right now, let's just think of a team that's not in the playoffs, and that's Scottie Pippen. Doesn't mean he's great. He's not great. Yeah. So I think we're saying the same thing. But I do think he's a hell of a number 2, especially because his skill set is so unique that it's he's your number 2. It's like,
what I would compare it to? Like Draymond. I'm not saying that Scottie Pippen is Draymond, so everybody please, don't come to me with pitchforks. Like, I'm not saying that.
No,
but what I'm saying is
Draymond is Scottie. Draymond is the Scottie of the Warriors.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I feel like Draymond on the Warriors is underrated, but I think Draymond individually is overrated. Like, people feel like if there's a lot of Draymond defenders out there that feel like, oh, if you put Draymond on the Phoenix Suns, Draymond's averaging 25 points a game. I'm like, really? Really? Like, no, you think so? Like, I don't think so. That's the comparison that I'm trying to make.
Well, to be fair to Scottie, though, in the 94 season, he was 3rd in MVP. I mean, I don't think Draymond can carry a team the way.
That's why I'm saying that he's not. That's why I'm definitely Pippen is not even. I mean, Draymond and Pippen shouldn't even be in the same discussion.
And it's not a coincidence that the next year. It's not a coincidence the next year the Bulls were 33-30 before Jordan came back. Like, they had 1 year with Scottie being really good, and then the next year they were just average.
Right, and I wonder how much of that. Him asking out of that game really affected the Bulls long term, because everybody always talks about why the Bulls didn't offer him an extension, why the organization treated Scottie the way that he did, and how much of that does play into the fact, like, when we needed you the most, you quit on us. Like,
yeah, but he was fighting for the extension back in 91.
So I think the biggest thing that I'm talking about with Scottie, though, is I think he's just made himself look bad just from a character perspective, because, I mean, you hear him in his own words talk about the 94 incident, right? And then like he sees that, you know, like, I'm sorry I let my teammates down. And, you know, like, and you feel like he's having this like pensive moment where he's about to say like, yeah,
right.
If I could do it all over again, I would choose a different route, or I would talk to Phil, or I would support my team. And he's like, no, I wouldn't have changed anything. I was just like, wait,
tell us all you need to know, right? That tells you what you need to know.
What? Like, but it's not even just, but it's not even just this. It's the things with the contract situation. Like, while the whole world was basically lambasting the Bulls, and look, the Bulls and Jerry Krause and especially Jerry Reinsdorf are just horrible. I mean, they're villains in this story too. Don't get me wrong. But this idea that Scottie was just this innocent bystander and all this happened, and poor Scottie, like, dude, you signed the contract. Like, nobody held a gun to your head. I know you had family issues, but nobody made you sign this contract. Nobody sat there and said, if you don't sign this contract, I'm going to put a gun to your mom. Like, no, nobody did that. You you made a financial decision to sign that contract. Like, I'm sorry. I can't feel sorry for a guy that knew and you got to believe, I have to believe, and I have to take everybody at face value, that he was advised against it by his agent. He was advised against it by Jerry Reinsdorf. He was advised against it by a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure folks in the Players Association was like, Scottie, really? This is what you're doing to us right now? Like, what are you doing? Like, so I'm sure he had a lot of folks in his ear telling him, don't do this. So he made a decision. And look, I get it. I understand it. But I can't feel sorry for you, you know. And then the thing with the surgery, waiting till September to get the surgery instead of doing it, and you know, after the championship, and saying, "Well, I'm not going to fuck up my summer." Like, geez, I mean, these things, like, man, Scott, like, I almost like, did anybody sit down with Scottie before this and say, like, yo, Scottie, you may want to like, not say these things? Like, I mean, in a way I kind of respect it, because it's his honest opinion and he's unfiltered about it. So I get that. I at least respect him for not being phony about it, but he's looked terrible. Like,
it shows a lack of self-awareness, which is like my least favorite quality in someone. If you don't have self-awareness, to me, I think you're kind of unbearable to be around. And he's kind of shown that. I mean, I've always kind of this guy, to me, like, he's an okay media personality at best, you know, because he's on The Jump, he's on these different shows. I mean, he doesn't seem like he's too interesting of a guy, but he doesn't seem like a douche either. But like in this documentary, he's just coming across as like very unself-aware. Like, he just doesn't understand. He just doesn't understand, or he's stubborn and proud, and just sticking to his guns, which to me is a bad quality too.
That's the perfect way to put it. Like, he's just so lack of self-awareness. Like why? And then but the surgery thing really bothered me, because you got to think about it in a team sport. Like, all these guys are sacrificing for each other. They're sacrificing for that one cause to try to win, right? Like, and this dude basically says, you know, oh, fuck Michael, fuck Steve Kerr, fuck Dennis Rodman, fuck all these dudes. Like, oh, you know, I'm just going to get the surgery in September because you're mad about a contract that you signed.
Right. and you know, honestly, like, he probably had a bunch of other like opportunities to negotiate too. I mean, if you're a good employee, if you play by the rules, if you do what you're supposed to do, and you make good relationships with the front office, you know, they're more likely to sit down with you, like, okay, listen, Scottie, we know that this is kind of unfair. You've done a lot for the organization. Let's see what we can do for you. But I don't think he ever put himself in the position to even have that discussion based off of the way he's been acting. You know, he's acting like a child. He's acting like he's this scorned human being. And maybe the reason why the Bulls organization treated him the way that they did was because he acted this way towards them. You know, you can always negotiate. You could always, you know, change your behavior to get what you want. And I think maybe he didn't do that. And, you know, we haven't heard any stories about him acting up that are outside of what we heard in the documentary. But my guess is it's like, you know, if he's going to treat us like this, why would we extend his contract? We don't even know if we want it extended at this point.
Right,
he's good. But after 7 years, we would not even want him anymore. So that would surprise me if that's what the Bulls were thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I completely agree with you, and like that, and that's why I brought up the incident in '94, because you got to think about it. Like, that's a black eye, man. I mean, if you're an organization and you're looking at that, like, why would we want to commit years and money to this guy? I know he helped us win a championship or 3 championships, but it's like, why would you want to commit, you know, long term to a guy who has already shown you that he's, you know, he lacks self-awareness and is selfish. is selfish.
Yeah.
Like for you to do that in a playoff game, it's one thing to do it in a regular season in December against Sacramento back to back, but it's like to do that in the biggest game of your career, to that, or one of the biggest games of your career to that point, the biggest game of that season, like for you to sit there and do that, like, and he better thank God that it didn't blow up in his face and that the Bulls ended up winning that game. Cause you imagine how they ran that play and they'd have lost that game. You know what I'm saying?
That was game 3. And they're down 3-0. They probably get swept. They probably get killed in game 4. Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah.
And then who knows what happens? What happens like going forward? Does Scotty stay a Bull? Do they trade him? Does Jordan come back? If Jordan comes back, are the Bulls what they are? Do they three-peat? So honestly, I mean, I think we're kind of making the argument now that Tony Kukoc hit the biggest shot in Bulls history.
You know what? It's not crazy. It's not crazy. It's not crazy to debate. It really isn't. I mean, it did put a lot of things in motion, man. It really did.
We just went down the craziest slippery slope ever.
And we're gonna hear about this. You know that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but the Scotty thing is just so, I mean, I think he is just, I think if anybody's stock has diminished a lot in the series of episodes, man, it has to be Scotty. Like Scotty just like, dude, like, what are you thinking? What are you saying? Like, do you hear yourself? Like,
he doesn't. No self-awareness.
Self-aware. You just can't be this tone deaf. You just really can't be.
Well, then you also have people in your ear that are like, yeah, Scotty, you deserve more. Yeah, that's right, Scotty. Like, you have yes men surrounding you when you're Scottie Pippen. I mean, he's one of the 50 greatest basketball players ever to live. I mean, he did support his family with the money that he made. He eventually got a nice contract with the Rockets and the Blazers. So, I mean, he did make money at the end of the day, and he probably just has a bunch of yes men in his ear.
And then when you contrast that behavior, you contrast that lack of self-awareness to Jordan. Right. Like it's just like, and then for the folks that were bitching on Twitter during episodes 1 and 2, like, why didn't Jordan fight for Scotty to get a contract? I'm like, who knows? If I'm Jordan and I saw that this dude quit on his roster, is this a guy that I'm going to go put my reputation on the line to go pay? Like, why would I ride or die for you when you've clearly shown that you were just going to do what's best for Scottie Pippen? Like, honestly, like, I have never seen a more unself-aware athlete in my life just on display for the world to see. Like, do you just not
Russell Westbrook, Carmelo Anthony?
Okay, so
no, you're right. You're right. Yeah.
No, but it's like, it's just mind-bogglingly laughable. Like, it's just like, dude, what?
No, I get it.
Scotty is just Scotty.
Especially with years to reflect. I think that's what it is. Like, you had decades to reflect.
20 years.
Yeah, like this is like this didn't happen last night. Yeah, this didn't happen last night. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's just crazy to think about, man. It's just crazy to think about. Anything else stand out to you? Any other nuggets from the 2 episodes?
Nothing I could think about particularly. I mean, it was more of the end of episode 7 that really got to me the most, and I thought it was the most interesting part of everything. But aside from that, I mean, nothing off the top of my head. What about
you? How much the baseball strike basically made Michael Jordan come back. That was something that
that too, yeah, 94.
I didn't think about. I mean, I don't think a lot of people really considered or thought about. Like, you got to think about it. Michael Jordan's this guy who loves the competition, loves the heat of the moment, and you're in a situation where baseball's not playing. They're using replacement players. Michael Jordan's like, I'm not doing that. So he basically is like left with nothing to do. Who knows? Maybe if the players and the owners get their act together, come up with a deal before that. Who knows, mate? Does Michael come back? I mean, who knows, right?
Hold on. You're a baseball guy. This bothers me. This whole thing bothered me.
Mm-hmm.
202, and you're going to sit here and tell me he would have made the majors? You're going to sit here and tell me that someone hitting 202 was it double A? Was it single A?
It was double A.
Someone hitting 202 in double A is eventually. Give me a break. And I think that's the one thing. Like, I don't really have a horse in the GOAT race. That sounds really weird to say, a horse in the GOAT race. Like, I don't care. Like, I really don't care. But like, to sit here and say Michael Jordan will win a pro because like he's Michael Jordan was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard. I get he's Jordan. I get he has this aura about him. I get he's hardworking. Did you see the man swing Manny, come on. Let's be honest. His swing was ugly as hell.
Jordan was not. Now to be fair, I think that had he not played basketball and had he stuck with baseball full time, who knows? Maybe. And I think that's what people say more, like had he focused solely on baseball, he was athletic enough. He had a knack or a knowledge of what to do, that I think that had he stuck with baseball long enough, or had he picked baseball over basketball and just dedicated solely to baseball, like could he have been a fringe major leaguer? Probably. Like probably he was athletic enough where he could. I think that I'm trying to find the logic. I'm with you. I don't think he wasn't going to make it. Now, this idea that Michael was going to be Dion essentially and just, basically play with the Bulls, play playoff games with the Bulls and the White Sox at the same time, it's just not, it wasn't happening. No, he's not Bo Jackson.
No. And I just, it's one of those things where it's like Michael wasn't perfect. He wasn't a perfect basketball player. He wasn't a perfect human being. And I think that's the one thing that annoys me the most about this document. I don't even think it annoys me about the documentary, but just Jordan's legacy, where it's like this man could do no wrong. Like there's people act as if he's never missed a game when he jump shot, like he never lost a game. Like everything that he touches, everyone just pretty much goes, "Oh yeah, Jordan would have done that. Jordan would have been great at that. Jordan." Like there's arguments now that Jordan would average like 45 a game in today's game.
But that's the superhero aura that he's created for himself. That it's
impossible for like the generation above us to shake. It's crazy, dude. It's like relax. I mean, even LeBron fans. I know LeBron fans can be very annoying. They aren't even like that with LeBron. They're not to that extent.
Yeah, no, I get it. Like every fan base, like I've always had this argument with folks online. Like every fan base is annoying. Like Kobe.
Yes, I agree.
You know me, I'm a Kobe stan. You don't think there's annoying Kobe fans? Absolutely.
Very annoying.
The Beehive is annoying. Like there's a lot of annoying. A lot of annoying fan base. So yeah, I get it. I know. I think you can't put that on the player per se, because I mean you can't help the extreme, the sycophants, if you call it that. You can't help that. Like every player, every great personality or figure is going to have annoying fan bases. It's just it's par for the course. So I get it. No, but the Jordan thing with baseball, I think they were, for the most part, pretty. I think that was the only part of the documentary that I did agree. I agree with you that there was a little like
romanticizing.
You're stretching it a little bit. Like I do think had he played baseball throughout, had he not focused on basketball, like could he have eventually developed into a decent enough prospect where he could have made it into the major leagues? Like, yeah, probably. Who knows? We don't know that, obviously. I think the greatest thing that the baseball conversation does for Jordan, I think it's another notch in baseball's cap. It's how hard baseball truly is. And I text that in a group chat. It's like, that's why baseball to me is the greatest game, because it doesn't matter how great, it doesn't matter how athletic you are. It doesn't matter how tall you are, how fast you are, how strong you are. All these things help. Don't get me wrong. Right. But if you get hit, it doesn't matter. If that pitch recognition isn't there, if that bat speed isn't there, if that hand-eye coordination isn't there, if that ability to just have that God-given ability to hit, it doesn't matter who you are. And take Michael Jordan, for example, arguably the greatest athlete ever put on this earth, right? Arguably.
Right.
Steps onto a baseball diamond and just can't
do it.
And then you couple that with Tony Gwynn. Now I know Tony Gwynn was a
bad man. Tony Gwynn was a bad man.
And Tony Gwynn was a very good basketball player. He actually could have played in the NBA. He was actually, look it up, for San Diego State. Tony Gwynn was actually a really highly talented point guard. So I know it's a little unfair, the comparison for Tony Gwynn, but you look at Tony Gwynn with the Padres, fat, stubby Tony Gwynn, right? And he's hitting 90. I mean, you couple that with, it's just to me, baseball is the most purest game, because it's like it doesn't take all of these superficial things that like the average fan can't relate to. Like nobody can relate to being Anthony Davis and being 6'11", basically a 6'11" two guard. Like nobody can relate to this. You know what I mean? But baseball, it's a God-given talent that just a lot of people just don't have. So I think that's what that conversation with Jordan does more than anything else, is just adds a different notch to
to baseball's, feather in the sense that like, yeah, this is how hard this sport is. If I was baseball, I would have been thinking like perfect marketing and just ran a commercial. Like, this is how hard it is. The greatest basketball player that ever lived.
Just him striking out.
Yeah. And not the dog Jordan, but just kind of to amplify, like, this is how hard it is.
Like, how sad was it when he made that error? Like, they showed him making that error in the outfield. It was like, I was like, oh my God. I felt bad. I was like,
yeah, I
cringe.
I do like that they did talk about how kind of him being in the minor leagues and being kind of around just normal people for a change. I think that he kind of got a kick out of that, and it was enjoyable for him. I did like that he didn't see himself as bigger or above anybody else. Like, I think he did the whole thing, because it could have been very easy for him to say, yeah, I'm not going to, bumfuck land, Georgia to go play AA ball, or I'm not doing that. You're going to put me on the roster. Like, he rode the buses. He played the game. He played the game in more ways than one. So that's impressive. I mean, he could have easily, he had enough pull where he could have been like, yeah, I'm not doing all that. I'm not doing all this, or I'm not doing all that.
No, he flown everywhere. Yeah, you're right.
And to his credit, like, everybody that they've interviewed, they interviewed Terry Francona. Terry Francona, a lot of time is going on record as saying he was just a great guy to deal with, and was never a problem. All the other players that he played with said, yeah, the guy was just great. Never thought of himself as bigger than the team. I'm Michael Jordan. Don't talk to me. He was one of the guys. He was talking shit on the bus. Like, it was just. Right. I also think that helped him kind of find the love for basketball again too. Just being around these guys that in a lot of ways have the same mentality that he had, that they're just solely focused on this one goal of making it to the major leagues. He didn't have to deal with all the other issues that, is he staying out too late gambling? Is he, did his father get murdered by a secret John Gotti conspiracy? Like, all these other stupid things that, don't matter. And I think he was just one of the guys for a change. I think that actually helped his basketball love. I really do.
It was an escape from reality. I think that's what his minor league baseball career was, to be honest with you. Because you're riding the bus with minor league players. You're making like $20,000 a year. So it wasn't about money. Like, he was basically playing for free. That's really what it was. It was therapy. Like, that's how I look at his baseball career. It was just therapy. He felt a connection to it with his childhood, which probably meant he had a connection to it with his father. And he just needed to do it for himself and for his mental health. Because, at the time, they did show him in a hotel room by himself, not wanting to go out. And, now he's able to travel the country on a bus with people who are like-minded and have no pressure. I think it was just completely therapeutic for him.
And it always, and it never felt like it was a put on, like it was phony. Like, I actually,
it was real.
He really wanted to do this. Like, he really wanted to be, the best baseball player they could be. He wanted to be Deion. He wanted to make a major league roster and be an all-star and hit 25. Like, he wanted that. It just, unfortunately, just didn't have the skills, so it's just, It's amazing. But I thought about that on Sunday night and even some yesterday. I was like, just imagine if, like, what if the 94 strike doesn't happen? Who knows? Does Jordan even come back to the Bulls?
I think he does.
I mean, I think
maybe not that year, but eventually.
Yeah, I think he does eventually, but who knows? What is Jordan when he comes back? Like, who knows? Maybe he plays baseball for 2-3 years. He comes back. He's at the end of his prime as opposed to still kind of in that middle point of his prime. So yeah, it's interesting to think, like, all of these events that happened that laid the groundwork for this. I mean, essentially this documentary. All right. So just to kind of wrap up, how do you think they'll kind of conclude, the last 2 episodes of the documentary? Or I should say this, what do you want to see them talk about? I mean, they've pretty much talked about everything, right? They've talked about the gambling. They talked about the situation with his dad. They've talked about pretty much, Isaiah, the dream team. They've talked about kind of all of the major topics. Is there anything like they haven't talked about or that they haven't covered yet that you want to see covered?
As a Knicks fan, I just kind of wanted to hear what he had to say about the Knicks being a threat, and then I got the confirmation that I needed, the affirmation that the Knicks are pretty much a threat to them. The flu game's going to be fun to document how he was feeling. If they have any like backstage, because that whole season they were being followed around with the camera, so I'm sure we're going to see some pretty cool footage from the flu game that we haven't seen before. I want to know if he pushed off. I want to know if he admits that he pushed off on Russell. He absolutely did. And aside from that, we pretty much know the rest of the story. I'm not really too interested in his Wizards days, to be completely honest with you. I think his Wizards days are a little underrated. He played a lot during it. I think people give him credit for. But I don't really care about them, to be honest with you. I just want to see like behind the scenes footage of the flu game because to me, that's probably his most remarkable game.
Yeah, I actually do want. I know that they're going to end after 98. That the director has already confirmed that they're not going to go into playing career. So I know that's that. But I that is a little disappointing. Like I would have wanted to see some of the Wizards stuff, because I think if people kind of got a fresh look at the Wizards days, I think they'd look at it a little differently. Right. Because a lot of people kind of misremember, like there's this like narrative that Jordan was like this old man on a rocking chair playing with the Wizards. Like, no, he was still averaging 20 points a game. He had a 50-point game. Like he was still, it's crazy to think about that. Even like in 2001, 2002, he was still a top 25 NBA player. Yeah. At 38, 37, 30. Like it's crazy to think about that this guy was just that just speaks to his goatness. Like the guy was just
his goatness. Yeah, he's great.
Yeah. So I would have wanted to see some Wizard stuff. And I think the other thing that I would have wanted to see is more of Jordan's kind of family life, not getting into the divorce stuff and all that, but just kind of like his kids. Yeah, his kids, their relationship, kind of, again, breaking that wall down with Jordan where you're seeing a different side of Jordan that you don't normally see. I know he just had twin daughters, like seeing him with his twin daughters, like seeing how that relationship is. Like, I think seeing that different side, that side of Jordan, I think that's something that I would have probably found interesting. And who knows, maybe the success of the documentary maybe leads it to a sequel documentary. Who knows? Who knows?
Hope so. That'd be cool. I know LeBron's planning one. So that's going to be a rebuttal. That's going to be fun to watch. That's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Oh, LeBron. So some jokes just absolutely
they write themselves.
They just do. Hey man, it was a pleasure. I think this is probably one of the most interesting podcasts we've done so far. So
absolutely. Tune in next week when we go over the Democratic stimulus bill.
Hey man, if you're game, I'm game, man. I'm gonna need content after next Sunday. Shit. Man. Let's do it. Before you go, man, just plug everything you got going on right now. The Dime, everything. Just kind of tell everybody where they can find you. Just sell yourself for a couple minutes.
So my podcast is The Dime with Josh Rodriguez on Apple, Stitcher, Google, Spotify. Just search The Dime with Josh Rodriguez. It's an NBA podcast. Took a little bit of a break because my microphone broke, but I fixed my mic yesterday just in time to be on this podcast, thankfully. We'll be filming a new episode soon. So look forward to that. I am also a producer at Uninterrupted, which is LeBron's company. I'm not a company man though, so I will criticize him when, he deserves to be criticized. So don't think that if you have me on your podcast, I won't say anything too critical of him because I will. And you can check out our podcast. I'm producing Austin Rivers' podcast, Go Off, which is actually debuting tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the 13th, for anyone who's listening. So go download that.
Absolutely, man. Josh, It's been a pleasure. As always, man, thank you for being my guest. We will definitely do this again. Absolutely.
Absolutely, dude.
Maybe
we might have to do a political podcast, dude. I think your wife was right, man.
Hey, man.
We have to do it.
Let's do it. I'm down, man. I mean, shit, it's not like honestly, the 2020 election is the content we got going right now. I mean, we got nothing else going on. I guess we could sit on a podcast.
I already have concepts, dude. We can I have concepts in my head. I don't know if you want to do it right now. We could talk off air, but I have concepts in my head.
I can't talk off air because I've got my little one right here just wanting my attention as we speak. But it's a date for next week for real, though.
Awesome, man. Sounds good.
Let's do it. All right, man. Everybody, thank you for listening. You guys know where to find us on Twitter at AGS Pod, Instagram, AGS Podcast, Facebook, Any Given Sunday. Make sure you become a member of AGS Nation. Follow me on Twitter at The Manuel Brown, Instagram, The Manuel Brown, Snapchat, MannyBro15. Make sure you go follow Josh. Make sure you go support his podcast as well and all of his work. As always, thank you guys for listening and subscribing. Without you guys, there is no podcast. Thank you. Tune in next week. We may have Josh Rodriguez back on the show. We may even do just a whole new hey, the world is at our fingertips right now, so we'll definitely be back next week on the podcast. For Josh Rodriguez, I'm Manny Brown. We are out of here. Peace.